It was a cool late afternoon when Lucas decided to take his usual walk through the tranquil forest after a long day of work. The golden light of the setting sun streamed through the towering trees, casting long shadows across the path. But this evening, something felt off. The forest, usually alive with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves, was eerily silent. It was as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Lucas slowed his pace, his heart beginning to race, as an uneasy feeling settled in his chest. The silence was oppressive, too heavy to ignore. And that's when he saw it, a figure up ahead, sitting motionless in the middle of the trail. A bear, but not just any bear. This one was different. It wasn't moving, wasn't showing any signs of aggression. In fact, the bear's head was down, and soft, almost inaudible cries seemed to emanate from it. Lucas froze in his tracks, his instincts screaming at him to run. But he couldn't. Something in the bear's posture, the way it looked so vulnerable, held him in place. Lucas stood there, rooted to the spot. The bear's cries were muffled, like the sound of someone sobbing in the distance. It wasn't the type of behavior Lucas was used to seeing in these woods. Bears were wild creatures, driven by their instincts and survival. This one seemed to be asking for help. His pulse quickened, but his feet remained still. The bear's eyes slowly lifted, and for a moment, their gazes locked. What should have been a terrifying encounter, a wild animal showing signs of aggression, was anything but. Instead, the bear's eyes were full of something else. Fear, sadness, desperation. It was as if the bear was begging him for something. Lucas's heart clenched. This wasn't a normal situation. His instincts screamed at him to run, to get as far away from the bear as possible. But something inside him, a curiosity mixed with a strange pull, kept him frozen in place. "What's going on here?" he whispered to himself. Another mournful cry escaped the bear, and that's when Lucas realized that this wasn't just a random encounter. There was something more to this. He wasn't just witnessing a distressed animal. There was a deeper story unfolding before him, and he had to understand what it was. After what seemed like an eternity, the bear slowly lifted its massive body off the ground. Lucas took a cautious step back, still unsure of whether to run or stay. But the bear didn't move toward him aggressively. Instead, it turned its body and began walking away slowly, looking back over its shoulder as if waiting for Lucas to follow. "Am I really doing this?" Lucas asked himself, his mind torn between fear and an inexplicable need to understand the bear's actions. Every instinct told him to run, but his feet followed the bear, step by step, deeper into the forest. The path grew denser as the bear led him further, through darkening shadows and tangled underbrush. With every step, Lucas felt the forest closing in around him. Yet, he couldn't turn back now. Something was driving him forward, something he couldn't ignore. The further they walked, the more surreal it felt. The sounds of the forest faded into the background, replaced by the rhythmic sound of his footsteps and the occasional rustle of the bear ahead of him. The silence had returned, heavier this time. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath. Suddenly, they came to a halt at the edge of a fast-flowing river. The water crashed against the rocks with deafening force, cutting off any further path forward. Lucas stopped dead in his tracks, his heart pounding as he stared at the turbulent water. There was no bridge, no way to cross. But the bear, without hesitation, moved toward a makeshift bridge. It was nothing more than a precarious structure of logs and vines, likely a remnant of something long forgotten. The bear crossed it with ease, its massive form carefully navigating the unstable surface. Lucas stood frozen, watching the animal on the other side. The bridge seemed unsafe, the kind of structure that could easily give way. His fear flared up again, his legs trembling at the thought of crossing it. "Can I really do this?" he whispered to himself, his thoughts racing. But before he could change his mind, the bear turned and glanced back, its eyes locking with his once again. It was as if the bear was urging him to follow. Taking a deep breath, Lucas took the first step onto the bridge. The logs creaked under his weight, the vines swaying with each movement. He couldn't afford to look down at the raging water below. His only focus was the bear, waiting patiently for him to catch up. Every step felt like a lifetime. The bridge swayed violently as a gust of wind hit, and Lucas nearly lost his balance. His heart raced, but he held on, finally reaching the other side. He exhaled a shaky breath, relief flooding through him. But the bear was already moving forward, not waiting for him to catch up. As the last of the daylight faded, Lucas felt the air grow colder. The path ahead became even more treacherous, winding deeper into the forest. He followed the bear through an increasingly eerie landscape, his thoughts a whirl of confusion and unease. And then they arrived. In the heart of the forest stood an old, abandoned circus. The faded remnants of colorful tents fluttered in the wind, their bright hues dulled by years of neglect. The rusted skeletons of cages loomed ominously, some still holding empty, broken remnants of animal enclosures. The air was thick with the smell of decay and abandonment. Lucas couldn't believe his eyes. What was this place? Why had the bear led him here? The bear moved forward, walking through the ruins as if it knew exactly where it was going. Lucas followed, stepping cautiously over broken equipment and scattered debris. His feet crunched on the overgrown path, the remnants of what once was a lively, bustling place now silent, haunted by its past. The bear stopped in front of one of the empty cages, its eyes filled with sorrow and memory. It was as if the animal was reliving something painful, something it couldn't forget. Lucas bent down, looking closely into the bear's eyes. His heart ached. It was then that he realized, the bear hadn't just led him to this circus by chance. This bear had been part of the circus, a victim of its cruel past. The sadness in its eyes told a story that words never could. This is where you came from, isn't it? Lucas whispered, a lump forming in his throat. The bear nodded slightly, confirming his suspicion. As Lucas stood there, feeling the weight of the past and the pain of the bear, he knew he couldn't just walk away. He had to do something. He pulled out his phone, managing to send a message to the authorities before the signal disappeared completely. He had to make sure the world knew about this place. These animals needed to be freed. The circus, abandoned for years, had to be shut down for good. But Lucas didn't know that what he had just uncovered would lead to much more than he could have ever imagined. The authorities arrived soon after, and the truth about the illegal activities at the circus was revealed to the world. As the last of the animals were freed and the circus was shut down, Lucas knew that his work was far from over. The story of the bear and the abandoned circus was only one chapter. It was now his mission to spread the word, to make sure that no more animals would suffer like the ones trapped in those cages. You can be part of the change. If this story moved you, take action now. Share this video, raise awareness, and join the fight for animal rights. No animal should ever be mistreated again. Together, we can make sure that their cries for help are heard. Lucas's life was never the same after that fateful encounter with the crying bear. The journey he started that day in the forest led him to become a passionate advocate for animals, working to protect those who cannot speak for themselves. The bear was free now, but Lucas knew that the fight to protect animals everywhere had just begun. Will you join him?